Ilwad Elman is a Somali-Canadian activist and director of the Elman Peace Centre in Mogadishu. She is a Nobel Peace Prize nominee for 2021. Her portfolio at the centre includes human rights, gender justice, protection of civilians, and peace and security.
So you want to change the world? Well, you need to be a leader to do that. And leadership is the most valuable commodity in the world. And right now, more than ever, it seems the rarest commodity. Some say leadership can be taught. You either have it or you don't. That it's like the fight or flight instinct, which is an active defense response dictated by nature. Whether you fight or flee, your heart rate gets faster, which increases oxygen flow to your major muscles. Your pain perception drops and your hearing sharpens. These changes help you act appropriately and rapidly to any given situation. Or you don't, and you flee, or you follow. As for me, I'm a fighter. I'm the kind that, for better or worse, runs towards the problem and tries to solve it, even if it's in a burning house. But that's a natural instinct that I can't really take credit for or control. Whereas my leadership, it's intentional, it's calculated, and will certainly not knee-jerk. So I actually believe that leadership can be awakened and nurtured in anybody. That is, anybody that is truly ready and committed to carrying the responsibility it comes with. So if you want to change the world, you have to first know and search within yourself with deep humility, zero ego, and profound clarity, and listen for the knock of leadership, the call to service that is grounded in your conviction at your heart's door, and choose to answer. It takes a lot of people to change the world for the better, and no two leadership journeys will be alike. But I will share with you today what I have learned along my path, with the hope this journey of mine resonates or intersects with yours watching today, or who knows, maybe draws your attention to your heart's door for those who've been waiting for that knock. I was born in Somalia to two ardent peace and human rights activists, Fartuun Adan and Elman Peace. When the war broke out in Somalia, my parents had to make the difficult decision to split up, not knowing would be the last time they would see each other. My mother fled with my sisters and I for safety, and my father remained in Somalia, spreading messages of peace and disarming thousands of youth being co-opted by the warlords. Under his campaign, drop the gun, pick up the pen. Whilst my mother and sisters and I were on journey as refugees who finally ended up in Canada under asylum, my father was killed in pursuit of peace. His slogan, drop the gun, pick up the pen, can still be found marked on the streets of Mogadishu 25 years after he was killed. He's revered to this day as the Somali father of peace. My mother raised us in Canada on her own, with 3 young girls in tow on her own. This African woman from the sunny side of the world, now a young widow on her own, braved the cold from the great north to give us an opportunity and a chance at a peaceful life, a chance that millions of others who did not escape the war would ever get. This was a message and awareness that ran through my house all the time, that motivated my sisters and I towards this unspoken goal of having to succeed, having to take advantage of the opportunities presented to us, but also having to find purpose and giving back one day. A fierce custodian of my father's legacy she was. So it came to no surprise for my sisters and I when my mother decided to leave Canada and continue the peace work she and my father were leading before she had to leave him and all of it behind for us. My mother is a fighter too, you see. The greatest fighter I know, actually. She went back to Somalia when it was metaphorically and literally the burning house on fire. And she left my sisters and I when I was 16 to care for ourselves in Canada because it was time for her to go back to serve in the peaceful transition out of conflict. Here I learned that in order to create change, your convictions in your cause have to be so strong and unwavering that they cradle you in the face of any adversity you may and most likely will face in your journey. It was this conviction and determination that kept her and all of us going when my eldest sister, Elman, was also killed in Mogadishu in 2019 at the age of 31. You must have unrelenting belief in your cause so that you can stand behind it today, tomorrow, throughout all of the ups and downs, during the many challenges you will face and the bumps and bruises you will collect along the way. You have to truly believe in what you're doing. And then you start. It's easier said than done, but if you want to change the world, you have to start. And no action is too small. There are so many unrealized dreams, potential solutions for all of our worldly problems locked up and going to waste in someone's brain because they are too afraid to start. Or they overthink the whole process and try to cross every T and dot every I before they make a single move and ultimately kill their idea before it even has a chance. I've had fear of failure, fear of not getting it right the first time, fear of daring to take on a challenge so big that I began to question, who am I to think I can create change where so many others before me have failed? I felt this the strongest in my life at the age of 19. I had just left Canada and returned to Somalia. It was at the height of the conflict. I went to visit my mother, who had at this point been in Mogadishu for 3 years already. I wanted to understand the work that she was doing. I needed to understand what was causing her to risk her life every day. What was it that she chose over staying with my sisters and I? And I saw the organization she started in the 1990s and relaunched, that she named in honor of her forever love, my late father, the Elman Peace Centre, she called it. I met the child soldiers she was rehabilitating. I saw the street children she fed, the women from the internally displaced people's camps she provided humanitarian assistance to, the girls that got free education at her facility, and I saw the challenges she faced in her good, life-changing work every day. My arrival in 2010 coincided with a devastating drought and famine in Somalia, where hundreds of thousands of people died of starvation and disease, and nearly 1 million people became internally displaced, mostly women and children. And they were all coming to Mogadishu, where they were in search of relief and aid. In this, I witnessed a horrifying disaster within a disaster, the indiscriminate and widespread rape and abuse of women and children, happening in these relief camps, almost in plain sight, but without any repercussion or concern, it seemed. With a moral obligation to respond, but no resources, shelter, or services we could offer beyond opening our home and the Elman Peace Centre for overnight protection to survivors, my mother and I started a journey that would generate a discussion on sexual and gender-based violence that never before existed in Somalia. And it led us to opening the first rape crisis center in the country. We called the project Sister Somalia, and with the help of our friends Lisa Shannon from the US and Katie Grant from the UK, we raised a humble $5,000 from individuals who cared from all around the world to just be able to start. Starting this project that continues to save lives in Somalia today and has expanded from one tiny location in Mogadishu to now fully serviced emergency and women's development centers across Somalia was not only difficult to start because of funding, but because of the imposter syndrome that made us question if we could take on what everyone else seemed to ignore or deem too big a challenge. In a sea of spectators and doubters that said we couldn't, and of course, all the while in an environment ripe with conflict. The lesson here is, by just starting, in spite of all of the fear, however small the action initially was, it created a ripple effect and a movement that became unstoppable and continues to this day. I also learned here that although starting something new sometimes has to be the way to create change in a particular context, it is certainly not the only way. You can change the world by building with others and joining a cause without reinventing the wheel or duplicating efforts. In the past century, the world has experienced a lot of social change, and in that has mainstreamed NGOs, nonprofits, good companies with CSR, and a culture of philanthropy. Yet we continue to witness war, poverty, hunger, massive social injustices, and environmental degradation. There is still so much work to do, and no single organization or project, however effective it may be, can tackle these deeply rooted global issues alone. It is my belief that we can create a healthier, more just, and fair world when we work together, and not in silos or in duplication of each other's efforts. The torch of activism was passed to me by my mother, and I use it today to illuminate the path I am following, as well as to light the way forward for the next generation. A Somali proverb that captures the spirits of this is "Hari meside, wara kaharo." It loosely translates to "you won't last, so build something that will." I believe that some of the global issues I'm working on can be solved within my lifetime. But I also recognize with deep serenity that others may not be realized in my time. And the single most important lesson I've learned is that the greatest act of leadership is to be able to inspire, educate, and shape the next generation. I've been able to lean on the shoulders of iconic women throughout my quest to change the world, giants who have moved mountains to pave a way for me, awakened my leadership, and invested their power influence, and time in me in order for me to be able to take on the seemingly intractable conflicts of the world. On this International Women's Day, as we explore the power of the collective to reload Africa and to heal the world, I express my gratitude to the ancestors and the women who came before me, and to you, my commitment to pay it forward and support you in your journey to change the world. Thank you.